Huh?
Hello. Yes, my dear students, I am with the next part of my lecture, the second part of story photographs. In my first lecture, whatever I told you, I'm not going to repeat it. But only thing is, we can understand that there was a lady who was sitting all alone in her room with no space at all, and her thought is blocked. She only wants to enjoy her past memories, which boast of her luxurious life, which boasts that as a collector's wife, how she had enjoyed her life. So I would like to read some lines and so that I can make it clear what actually the narrator through these lines wants to express. So I begin. He was dressed for the office. They were on a stone bench. The old fort must be waiting somewhere. They must have just finished, all of them, their wonderful breakfast. And they must have moved out to the garden before their magnificent peon carrying all the files to the fort. What a peon he was, she thought, feeling the tears appear. This was the stone bench under the leash trees. She could not have told why she was sure, because at once the smell of it came to her. The cold, early morning smell. She raised her head, bewildered, and gazed uncertainly across a little crimped room. When it became hot, they would move to the veranda, which looked across the flower beds. Those North Indian flower beds, soft, droopy pansies of pink, pinky white, and purple, little snowy white sparks of daisies, tufts of carnations, little bobbing bunches of phlox, all together in huge, unbelievable beds. She would watch and watch, not knowing whether she felt pleasure or pain. Now, students, this is the line which I want to underline. She was enjoying the every moment of her past memories. But there was a mixed feeling, whether she was feeling pleasure or pain. Now, why pleasure and pain? Because she was feeling pleasure for her past memories. But suddenly, when she compares her life to the present one, there is a pain, there is an anguish in her heart, and she feels that what she has got in this life, how she has achieved in this life, what she has not achieved in this life. She is a wonderful lady and she was a collector's wife, and therefore she says that I was enjoying every part of it, and suddenly there is a thought break in her process. See, Thaddam, the door was flung open. The servant boy was bringing her tea. A large plastic cup and two biscuits reposed on his tin tray. She stared at him, wounded. Now, you can very well understand that by not saying anything, the narrator has just drawn a line. The thought breaking, the breaking of chain of her thoughts and her present condition, all has automatically make it obvious to us that what life she had in her past and what life she's dealing in her present. Because that time the chauffeurs all were very courteous. The peon, they bought coffee for her. She would sit enjoying the delicacies. And here, the small servant boy, he doesn't have even manners and he opens the door with a bang. Thaddam. Thaddam is a she has the narrator has told us that how with the sound of a door which is so irritating to her, and she keeps on telling that boy that don't do it, but that boy never bothered her. And he bought tea also in plastic cup with 2 biscuits, and sometimes her fingers also poured into the cup. This was a Sunday evening, and he was missing the TV film because of this old woman. Then she shouted at him for nothing. Now, the boy was not interested in serving tea to her because he was more interested in watching TV. It was Sunday, and therefore, this lady, her all orders seems to him of no use, and he was in a great hurry, in great haste. He just wanted to leave the room. Now this lady, she was so hurt, and she thought that she's going to complain this attitude of servant to her daughter-in-law, because she would tell her that when you go out all the time, I'm left alone, and I beg you, she says, she thinks of telling to her daughter-in-law that please tell him how to serve tea. Now I would like to quote these lines. Tears of anger began to gather in her eyes. She picked up a biscuit, liquid began to dribble down her chin. If it hadn't been for his banging, how much she would have enjoyed her tea. It was years since she had forgotten her tea time and had the pleasure of being suddenly reminded. From beneath the cushion of a rocking chair, she drew out a large grey handkerchief. The cushion of a rocking, shaking violently chair, she drew out a large grey handkerchief, man-sized and fingers shaking violently now, wiped her mouth. Tea in dirty cups. Doors banged. Her clock was not repaired. Ruth's servants. She knew what her daughter-in-law would say if she complained. I'll try and explain to him nicely, she would say, implying ever so gently that in this generation they were not cruel to servants. Now this also not cruel to servants, she's reminded of her servant, her old servant Abdul. And that lady, she reminisces that how Abdul was devoted to him, to her, to her husband's duty. He was on her husband's duty, but still he was very much devoted to her also. And she recalls that incident when once she went to visit her servant's village when he lost his wife. And I would like to quote those lines. She says, all Abdul's relatives said they have never seen such a collector's wife. He had fallen at her feet and said, Mem Saab, you are my father and mother. By your grace, we are alive. Beautiful his face was, shining with love and faith. She had wanted to stroke his middle-aged head. The photograph had brought the moment back to her like a phrase of music which now stuck in her head. Abdul's unshaven face and the feel of the dried cow dung under her feet. The little hut crowded with his relatives, with everyone, and people were looking at her with great awe and surprise. Now, once again in this story, we come to know about one more fact, and that was her daughter-in-law is a Hindu. It was one thing to be a Hindu girl. It was another to be always wearing a bindi, which was so much larger and redder, and then rushing to the college as if it were the only college in the world. Actually, daughter-in-law, she teaches in a college, and the irritating thing about her is not only she belongs to other religion, she puts red bindi, And this red bindi is also very irritating, I would say, sight to see, and she gets irritated over it. But she has no option, only to listen to her daughter-in-law's conversation. Then beside the lamp stood her clock, the hands eternally at 5:45. There came a little knock on the door, Urmila's knock. She felt a faint relief thinking of the light. Now Urmila could switch in on. Urmila came on with a visiting face, which was like someone testing the water before taking a plunge. But today she was ready for it. With the memory of Abdul fresh in her mind, with the memory of her commissioner's dinner, she was ready. Her daughter-in-law went mechanically to the lamp and switched it on. The old lady saw that she was wearing another of those village saris, which she once had mentioned without proffering an opinion, used to be worn in the old days long only by cleaning women. Urmila sat down at the edge of the bed and did not pick up the paper. Well, she said in her Bombay Hindi, it was no use trying to call it Urdu. How are you? There were so many answers. How do you expect me to be alone for so many years? I'm feeling ill because the tea was cold again. I'm trying to recover my senses after your boy banged the door. But today she felt no need for all this. Because of Abdul and the commissioner's dinner, she felt like making an effort. Today I had a bonus, she said, using the English word bonus to indicate good humor. I found some photographs of the days when your father-in-law was collector of Lucknow. Do you want to see them? Of course. Look then. There is the veranda of the collector's house. Can you tell which one is me? This one, of course. Urmila smiled. What beautiful old houses they were, Amma. And are these embroidered skirts like the ones you have in your cupboard? Now this is a sort of relief to her, because today old lady, she was in a good mood, and when her daughter-in-law comes and sits with her, one thing which brings freshness to her face is that she is going to switch on the light. And since she was sitting all alone in dark room, switching on the light has a symbolic meaning, and it brings some fresh air to her, some fresh news to her. My daughter-in-law, she sits with her mother-in-law, and then she says, mother-in-law in a conversation, she tells her that I'm going to show the photographs when your father-in-law, he was collector at Lucknow, and look at that. And then daughter-in-law, she sits for a while, she listens to it, and then she says, yes, they were beautiful houses, but you know, we don't have patience nowadays. We don't have that much of extravaganza that we can enjoy at this moment, because she was used to Mumbai life, and she was a Mumbaikar, and the lady, she wanted to tell not many things, but she couldn't even express all those things to her. Then Urmila pushed the album away, and then she said, it's all right if we cook tomato curry for you tomorrow. She asked something about cooking, and the old lady nodded meekly. And about your clock. Now, one more symbolic thing is that there is a clock in a room which is not in a working condition, it is stopped. So he says, okay, I reminded Rafiq, but he forgot, but no problems. Tomorrow I will let it mended. And she said that clock was out of order and no problems, but I will ask Rafiq to do it. And then she says there was no point for you, because it does not matter whether this clock is in a working condition, it is moving or not. But this statement of her also brings back to her memory lane. What could she answer? It didn't matter, but it was the only thing that mattered. If she need never know the time, she may as well be. At 11, she gave herself a stick of toffee from the tin in the cupboard. At 2, she would lie down for a rest. At 4, she would get up. However hard it was, she would manage to wash her face and her hands, try to smooth the creases in her sari, and sit in the rocking chair to wait for her tea. If she never knew the time, what would she do all day? Daughter-in-law thinks that for her, since she's an idle woman, she doesn't have any work to do. So the question of clock is immaterial to her. But she was very much accustomed to fixed timetable, and she has also fixed her life according to the time schedule. So she said, how can she thinks on her own that how can I express her, how can I tell her that I have all the routine is fixed for me, because at 2 I get up, then I wipe my face, then I sit on my rocking chair, I wait for the tea. So everything, all I do it according to the time which is shown by clock. Now Urmila, she stays at the door and she said, Mother, Amma, we have to go today. But of course the boy will be here, and try to keep him as long as you can keep him, and bye-bye. And she goes out of the room. At 2 in the morning, she was still restless. Urmila and the clock. Urmila came to her in the collector's house and said, Here is your clock, Amma. Now this is perhaps she's dreaming for the last time in her life. She was just thinking again and again of clock, her collector's residence. She wanted to see them properly. She wanted to come out of bed. She wanted to light switch, but nothing happened. Where was her room? Was it 5:45? What was the time? What was the time? She was just looking, and suddenly, in her dream, she saw Abdul came running, who was holding her and shouting, Mem Saab, Mem Saab. What pain she was bearing. She was feeling as if she's giving birth to Rafiq, and she could see in her dream her husband stroking her head, and suddenly she felt that someone has pierced her stomach and knife was going through her. And that was not an ordinary knife, but Abdul's meat knife. Then it ended. So with the death of this woman, the story comes to an end, which is a tragic end in itself, and which brings the reader also in a mood of pain and sorrow, and we feel little bit of concern and emotional concern for